How to become a property developer. That's what we all want, isn't it? As property investors, we want to learn how to develop eventually, maybe. This session is all about that. It's all about what is property developing? What is the process? How should we think about it? How should we find these deals? What are some of the key considerations? What are the things to look out for so that we don't get screwed over on a deal? We have a property developer that does exactly that. He's been doing this stuff for 15 years. He's been doing it in markets that are dipping down, markets that have been sideways, markets that have been rising rapidly, and he's taken lessons from each and every one of those stages, and he's sharing them all. His name's Adam Barry. You may have seen him around the traps. He's in our group, and he shares a lot of wisdom throughout the community, and he runs a business called Develop Capital, and all they do is developments all day, and that's what this session is all about, how to become a property developer. Hey everyone, my name's Joe Tucker, and together with Jeff Miles, we created Oz Property Investors. It's Australia's largest property investment community. We got 83,000 members. Each week we interview top experts in their field on property. This guy's an expert in property development. He talks to and breaks down the numbers on a deal that's going to make him around $300,000 worth of equity. And it's pretty cool. I enjoyed this session a lot. Lots of insights to take away. If you're interested in development, 100%, this is the way to go. You're going to enjoy this one. Let's go.
Do you look for sort of sites where land to asset ratio is over 75%? And I suppose that'll come down to what type of deal you're looking to do, because do you bother too much if you're buying to sort of sell versus buying to keep the front and then develop out the back? How do you think about that? Or you don't really think about that as a developer?
That's a great question. I've never thought of it that way at all. I will ponder it a bit. I will ponder it a little bit, but later on. But to think aloud, for me, the way I've always approached this is I look at niches, so ways to develop. Reno flip. I call it renovation development too, by the way. Reno flip, that's what I started in. You're adding value. Buying a block of land, just building a single house. My current PPOR, we did that. We made profit off that. That's a development. And, but the typical ones for me is renovate, subdivide, build. Sometimes I do not straight build. We've got one at the moment. Funnily enough, we often find we can't get the margin with that because maybe it's just a bit too obvious. If it's a vacant block of land, we're building 2 or 3 houses. It doesn't, too many people want to have a crack at it. We then tend to just check our market and what is the margin for the development. I've got a handful of strategies I like to do, 4 or 5. I know my numbers. We update our numbers periodically and look at the market periodically and just see what markets do we like in terms of their fundamentals. We won't develop in an area that's the price is trending down. It's just too risky. We want flat or ideally up. At the moment, Perth's booming. We want it to be showing up with a shortage. And then we will check, okay, in this area, what's the typical buy price? What's the typical sell price? Is there a margin there? If there's a margin there, it's on the short list. And then we also do a periodic scan of all our areas every day, essentially, just to see if oddballs come up. Like we bought a church 18 months ago that we're renovating and converting into 2 luxury houses. And it was probably maybe a bit, I don't know how the land to asset ratio thing works, but what attracted us to this is there was a lot of asset on this land that you couldn't develop to that density in terms of that much build anymore. We also picked up about 400 square meters internal of building around a time when build prices had been going up 2% a month. So the replacement cost was arguably more than what we paid for the site. And we probably bought the site for about land value, arguably slightly less, because anyone looking at this thing had 400 square meters of church to demolish, and it had has a low level heritage rating on it too. So maybe they'd let you demolish it, maybe they wouldn't. It wasn't so strict that they definitely wouldn't, but it just scared people off. And we looked at it from the view of the asset because we're always trying to get that dwelling for free. That's how it came together.
Yeah, and for a church, I feel like for a PPOR like type person, if it was just a church and a normal church, it would feel a little bit weird emotionally to, buy a church that needs some love and renovate it and turn it into your own thing. It would be, I don't know, it feels.
That'd be fun, Joe. I mean, I don't know. Why is it? It's
religious.
the beautiful stained glass windows, like.
Oh, it'd be beautiful. Don't get me wrong. I just think it would.
But, well, it's
like,
a lot of work. We
like
had
my
to put
mum
in a
wouldn't do
mezzanine
that.
floor.
Like,
Yeah,
mum would not do that.
Yeah.
And also, how do you finance that? It's not a residential dwelling.
That's true.
That someone had tried to buy it before us and fell down through finance because they'd gone to CBA or something, resi lending department. So, and even commercially isn't easy because what's the cap rate on a church? What's the rental yield?
Yeah.
Infinity, mate. Infinity.
It's pretty shit too.
Yeah.
So, we funded it through a private lender. That's how that worked.
Like, what are the fundamentals that you look at from a development perspective? Because that's going to be a little bit different to what the fundamentals are for, a buy and hold investor. What are some of the development fundamentals?
In terms of the market that we look at?
Yeah, what you look for in a market that's good for development.
Great question. Some of it's different, some of it's similar, but maybe the things we really care about are a bit different. So, like a buy and hold investor, I do not want a market that's going to decline. Now, unlike a buy and hold investor, I wouldn't mind at all if there's a market that is good for development profits that is flat and stayed flat for 10 years. Perth pre-COVID, in the areas I developed in, not in everywhere, was pretty flat. There were areas that declined a lot, but we avoided those like a plague. But flat was okay because we knew we could buy at this price and sell at that price. And I mean, ideally, I would have liked the dream market for me is one that goes up by a couple of % a year. So it's always okay to sell in. And there's a little bit of market growth there in case something catches you out in your development, you have an unexpected cost. But that's a bit of a unicorn market that doesn't tend to happen that often in Australia due to things we will speak about at another time, population growth and what drives our markets. So that's the first thing is I want a trend that is favorable. Second thing is the fundamentals of supply and demand. I want to ideally have a shortage. So how do I measure that? I'll look at what I'm building. It's very much a micro thing for development in the suburb I'm in, the asset class I'm building. It's simply how many are on the market, how many have sold recently, and making sure that's at least balanced. So, I mean, it sounds obvious, but I remember seeing profitable sites pre-COVID that showed profit in today's numbers. But when I went and looked at that part, you would see that there was 15 of that type of house on the market and only 5 had sold in the last 4 or 5 months. Well, that's not a market that's going to, that price is going to be going down. Yeah.
You're going to have to discount your asset to move it on. So, that's
a really good point because that's like days on market for specific product. Like, what is the unit market? What is the townhouse market? What is the house market for that? Yeah. That's a great way to look at it. Okay.
And you just got the next one, was days on market and turnover. Because remember, I'm looking to sell here. And I would say if you were looking to hold, different story, whatever criteria you use for wanting to hold in an area, you probably add your rental yields and those sorts of things in as well. But a number of these are still fundamentals of a market that you want to look at. It doesn't matter if it's development or not. Turnover, supply, demand, and trend. And then the last one is development profit. So I need to know that in today's numbers, development shows the profit margin they want. For the sorts of smaller, these 3-4 lot deals that we do, 15 to 20% profit on cost is the margin that we're quite happy with. And you might extend that a bit further to return on your equity based on the leverage you can get. That's more of a personal thing. Our deals are probably looking at gross around 40%, 50% per annum gross for the deal. You'd want to get on the return on the cash that's in there.
I want to stick to our sort of finance and finalized development sort of theme, because for those who've not run a development, so it'd be great to run through a little bit of that. So for that first time developer or somebody who's looking to do that next development, maybe take that developing to the next level. Can we break it down to the steps that people need to absolutely be considering? So I know that developing is probably like a 15 or 20 step process, but if you sort of said, okay, assess the site and what you can do, then sort of consider the costs and the end sort of sale. So is there much more? I know that sounds really simple and simplistic, but what else should people need to be considering when they're doing buy to sell development?
Let me just start with the find part. So I'll start with the very beginning, right? You want to do this. There's definitely a learning curve involved. Let's not beat around the bush. So most sites on the market that could be developed will lose money. And a lot of the others will make a bit of money, but not really enough, in my mind, to be bothered doing it. But then there's the gems that make good money, good margin. So let's just be clear on that up front, so people go in with their eyes wide open. And that's not to say don't bother doing it, because when you get that, go through the learning curve and you can add this to your skill set. Now, when you go, if you want to buy and hold, well, you can buy, add value, at least cover all your transaction costs. So most people doing buy and hold are 5% in the whole by the time they settle, because they've paid transaction costs. Then maybe it's negatively geared, but in your case, if you've added value, bought essentially at cost, and your yields on your end value, you might at least be breaking even now or positively geared. You can develop to create rental income as well. If I really want to lean into holding, we've got a couple of pilots at the moment of a few different things to look at creating rental income. And if that goes the way we think, we probably will be developing to hold more. And then the final one is you get to control. In essence, it's kind of like you lock in a 10% market growth or a 15% market growth. So you take Melbourne maybe 12, 18 months ago. If you're watching, you could see the potential of that city for capital growth, but it wasn't there yet. So if that could really slow down your plans if you bought and maybe it was 3 or 4 years before it grew enough for you to go again. Well, if you bought, you did a little 12, 18 month development, added some equity, refinanced, took that equity out, then you could go again, have your Melbourne stake, and then eventually it'll grow and you made lots of money.
So, okay, well, because you're an investor, right? You're a developer. You've put your investor hat on for this thing. So it's not just PPOR.
We've talked about this a little bit already with questions of where to start. This is a renovate, subdivide, build is a good little strategy because it mitigates risk with that renovation. So you might recall I mentioned earlier that we had sites where the COVID building crunch came and the building cost was going up by like 2% a month. So we thought we had enough borrowing capacity to build, but not when it goes up by 20, 30%. The reason we got through that and other developers got stuck is we had existing houses that could renovate and sell down and release equity and then build. And so that just helps mitigate risk. It also helps you through the build. So if we want to do this here, one thing with me, because my living is through developments and work with investors and give them a return. Well, I want my capital in those projects getting a return as well, right? So I have a pretty high cost of capital if I just plow money into a PPOR. So something like this allows you to stage your development, and you need enough money to do the first phase of renovate and subdivide. Then you could sell that renovated house, realize some value, put that into the construction if you wanted to do it.
So this house is savable. Like this house here that you've got is savable, and you're going to save it. You're going to renovate it and actually make it. I know we made a couple of jokes about it, but it's savable. You're not knocking it down.
Not knocking it down. No way. I've bought far worse houses than this and not knocked them down. It's very expensive to build a new house. To knock that down and rebuild it similar size might be 350, 400,000.
Only
it's just
400.
not construction.
Wow.
Well, that's a pretty small house.
Yeah. I mean, it is a small, it's
yeah.
very like that. That's the footprint, right?
It's like notionally, I don't think it's quite 100 square meters, like 90 something. And they've enclosed the veranda at the front, which is how they did that. That's that front little bit. So, yeah.
Give it the land size, to give it the internal size.
But
Okay,
that's the
great.
key to this whole project, which I'll talk about in a second. So
does this change? Like, I guess, I mean, we might talk about it later, like in the future, but like, this is probably a question that people have. Like, does the structuring change? Because this is now, because you've been saying we as the development company that you are. I'm a developer. We is this. This is now we as me and my wife. We are going to be doing this deal. So, is this going to be bought in a structure to then do all these developments, or is it going to be in the individual name? Like, I mean, it might be more.
In this case, this is in my wife's name. So because it's going to be our PPIR, we want to, it makes sense to put it in her name. And yeah, we're doing it to live in, but obviously you don't pay capital gains tax on your PPIR. So if I put that in a company or something, that could end up being quite expensive over time.
Massive.
Yeah, because this is, we're building this house with the idea of living in it for 10 years, if up to 10 years, depending on where life takes us. So, but yeah, great question. Structuring is very important. This is very different for me because I don't think I've ever developed in my own name. This will involve a subdivision and renovation and selling part of it off. So you do have your capital gains tax concessions. You have to track where the money's spent because the PPIR part won't have capital gains from a certain point, but other bits will. So record keeping is very important, and a good accountant that gets it, that tells you what to do.
Probably going to need the financial advice disclaimer on that one. That's clear enough. I think.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and but yeah, I do this stuff. Yeah, there we go. I do this stuff all the time, and this is still a new area for me. I've already rung him. Had a good chat with him once, so I'll be meeting up with him next week just to plan some stuff out. So,
yeah, I love it. I love this strategy.
When we went to buy it, I didn't think there'd be a lot of interest because it was single res and a rundown house. But there was 8 offers in one day, and I think what attracted people, I said before about the 2-unit sites with a big backyard. I don't usually buy them because people just want to build one house on. Type of thing. We were talking earlier about this is why I avoid it. Owner occupiers just wanted to have a bigger backyard, and it was cheap enough to do it.
This was a knockdown rebuild for them. If you look at next door, not next door, but over a couple, pretty much the suburb would be pretty medium to high level affluent. So people would have the budgets to be able to build like a $700,000-$800,000 property. So you're buying the land for 900.
And I reckon it was the under $1 million. I can get that much land for under $1 million. And I beat them because I knew I had my development profit up my sleeve on one hand. And the other thing that was interesting with this, there's a similar-ish site that sold like really recently for $950,000, but it was actually on the bordering that you could see in the satellite picture. There was a bit of a busier road. It was actually bordering that, so the location wasn't as good. So I was very happy to pay up to $950 anyway. They started the offers from high 800s, so $933. I was just going to keep going till I won or I got to $950. So that was that.
It's great when that is one of the things that I do see with developers is you can spend a lot more money because the end outcome is going to be really, really good. So when I am buying a property that has development potential and then I know I'm up against a developer, I'm always just bowing out because I know that they're going, if it's going to be a buy and hold for the longer term development, I just end up bowing out because I know that their margins make sense and they're going to spend the same numbers that I think, but I can't pay the same amount because I'm not developing it right now.
I want to know the profit. Tell us about the numbers on that, on this. What's your vision for the site?
Yeah, what is the plan? What is the juicy plan? Because I see a house. Wait, you're putting two at the back?
So, no. This is a real rough sketch, right? I just wanted to try and show you that the red line is the new lots, more or less. It's just a quick sketch from my surveyor.
Oh.
So the weird thing with this property is actually already on 2 titles, but you couldn't build on them. That's why there's a grey line.
So that can you do like in other in like Queensland, for instance?
No,
you do this?
because the frontage is too narrow for the zoning. So like you just couldn't even get approval on it. You do see that from time to time in Perth, but they just did it the wrong way around. If they split them the middle of the other way, then we'd be laughing like Brisbane. But no, we can't do it. So yeah, that's what it is. We're going to get 390 odd square meters at the back, build our 4-bedroom house, and then keep the front one there and have the driveway down the side.
That's your forever home. What is your? Okay, let's talk to the numbers. Let's talk to the numbers because that's where it gets spicy. That's where it gets fun.
Yeah. So I just want to give some numbers to help people just understand what kind of costs would be involved. It's pretty high level, so I'll just run through it pretty quick. Purchase price there, closing costs. It's just your stamp duty and settlement and so on. Development is a cash intensive thing, so you've got to pay to hold while you're doing the first stage of the subdivision.
300k Reno as well. Jeez, that's like it's a full gut Reno effectively.
No, I've sort of got a bit. I've thrown a lot of money in that at this stage. I can't remember if
But why don't you build out? I mean, God,
it still costs more to build. By the time you demolished and rebuilt that, I reckon you'd be in for 400,000 and
500. I reckon.
Look, 300 grand is like if I have to redo the roof, if I've got to really dig into the structure. I think we'll be a bit smarter than that. I'm hoping
you're building a lot of fat into it.
200. And frankly, the reason I put 300 in is I would normally get this under a due diligence period, and I would have got all these numbers really firmed up super tight. I couldn't do that because of the competition. And given it as my PPR, I was happy to take a bit more risk. So I guess I mitigated that by just putting some pretty big numbers in. So yeah, gotcha. I hope that comes back in, but there's a fair chunk in there. Construction costs too. We are going to build a nicer house. 650 is still a reasonable budget for a single level. So maybe I wouldn't expect a lot to come back off that, but I haven't used small numbers here for the cost of the works.
And also, you've been doing developments as optimizing for money and return, and then you're going to start building, and your wife's going to be like, "Oh, what about this? What about this? What about that? Oh, we want to add."
Look, I'll be fair to my wife. It's me that does that because I build a lot of nice houses. I'm like, I want a really nice house for me. So yeah, she's fine. She'd be fine with saying a lot less. But yeah, you're right. You want yourself a budget. I'll get some nice stuff there. Saunas. Everyone's getting saunas at the moment. Maybe I'll look at that. We'll see.
Hey, you've got a little bit of room for it, so you're all right.
And that's just the construction interest on the build component there. That's why that's a bit lower.
So can you talk to what that actually means? Like when do you start getting charged 30 grand? Like when do you start getting charged?
Look, that's just when we start building. This is the construction loan. So when we start building, we'll pay on draw down the slab and start paying on that. And since I did this, RBA gave us a little discount. When was that? Yesterday. So
it was.
Maybe these numbers are going to be a bit lower. But yeah, the key thing with construction interest is you draw down on it. So you pay more and more as you draw down on the loan.
You're doing 5 or 6 stages in this one. Can you do 6 stages, or are they going to do your 5 stages?
Oh, good question. Deposit, slab, plate, roof, fixings, lock up 6. Yeah.
And then you've probably got to pay for the bloody landscaping as well, don't you?
We'll roll that under. We can roll that.
Oh, okay. You got it in. Good stuff.
Yeah.
So I like
that. And we'll build this through the construction company we own. So, we'll roll in what we need to roll in to get the finance, manage the LVRs, and minimize the cash. So, costs there. It's small development. It still costs about 2.1 mil. So not cheap. And I didn't put in the cash component, but usually for this, I'd be funding the closing costs in cash, the holding costs in cash, the design and subdivision in cash, and probably the Reno. There are some lenders that will lend on a Reno, but it's easier and quicker to do it in cash. So this isn't a big development, but that would be top of my head, 500,000-600,000, depending on what deposit. So that is the tough thing with development. Again, that's why something like this that you could stage. If I wanted to sell that house before I built, I could do that to release capital. Not sure I will though, because Perth's market is booming. Something that I didn't mention, actually, we glossed over it. Another reason I wanted to buy this and buy it quickly. So I paid 933, but my end value there is 2.4 mil. So if the market grows while I'm doing this, the growth happens on the end value, right? So this is a great way to get a stake in a market that's growing and supercharge your capital growth without having to have paid 2.4 mil to get in, if that makes sense.
Yeah, the interesting, and I think the market you're looking at, that sort of 800K to 1.2 million and maybe a touch above in Perth at the moment, that's probably where a lot of owner occupiers are getting super excited at the moment. That sort of investor market has probably, I'm not saying dropped off the earth in Perth, but that rhymed. But yeah, there is that sort of real ability or want to upgrade or buy that sort of home at that 800 to 1.2 million and maybe a little bit more depending on where it is.